Chapter 26, From Ashes, a Spark, dash, dash. What's bothering ya? There's a crease between Kayumi's brows. His first instinct is to brush it off, to deflect with the same cold precision he's mastered over the years. People didn't need to know what he was feeling. It was easier to keep the walls up, to let them bounce off his silence until they gave up entirely. But Osamu's steady, no-nonsense demeanor isn't like the usual chatter he's used to dismissing. It's calm, unassuming, and oddly disarming. There's no push, no expectation, just a quiet persistence that settles into the space between them, waiting. It's irritating, but not in the way Kayumi expects. Osamu doesn't demand answers, he simply makes it difficult for Kayumi to avoid giving them. The weight of his gaze feels less like a cry and more like an offer to listen, and it chips away at Kayumi's defenses in a way he didn't see coming. Osamu is so different from Atsumu, and yet he is the same. So, Kayumi does something uncharacteristic. He speaks his mind. I hate people who are reckless. I can't stand anyone who goes in with no plan at all, and I despise not being prepared for anything that comes. So why? Kayumi cuts himself off and scowls at his own hands. A pause. So why did you fall for him? Osamu finishes Kayumi's question, and Kayumi's gaze snaps up. He nods curtly. It doesn't make sense. Love doesn't make sense, Osamu says simply and shrugs. Like he understands. It never makes sense. Kayumi doesn't respond immediately, his mind circling back to how Atsumu's determination somehow offsets the recklessness that drives Kayumi mad. The thought gnaws at him, pushing past every logical barrier he's tried to erect. He's always been someone who operates on precision, clarity, and control. But Atsumu is chaos. Pure, unfiltered chaos. And yet, Osamu's voice cuts through his thoughts again, calm and grounding. He's annoying, yeah, impulsive, too. But he also has the kinda loyalty that sticks, whether you want it or not. His lips quirk up, just slightly. Reckless doesn't mean careless, you know. Maybe that's what's got you tied in knots. Kayumi stares at him, the bluntness of the observation taking him off guard. Why do you care? He asks, tone clipped but curious. Osamu shrugs again, leaning back. Cause you look like you're about to think yourself into an early grave, Osamu says, crossing his arms. And as much of a pain in the ass as my brother is, I can't have you dropping dead and making me deal with the fallout. Pretty sure Komori-san would give me a bigger headache than he does. It's ridiculous, enough to earn a sharp exhale through Kayumi's nose that might almost qualify as a laugh. He looks back down at his hands forming an onigiri, the tension in his shoulders loosening just a fraction. Osamu lets the silence linger before adding, reckon if he has you feeling this messed up, he's probably worth it. Just don't tell him I said that, his ego's already big enough. This time, Kayumi laughs. Dash, dash. The light hurts. Atsumu doesn't even have his eyes open yet, but the brightness burns against his lids like an insult. A shallow breath slips through his nose, dragging in the sterile tang of solvents, alcohol, and latex. It reminds him of something. No, it reminds him of someone, but before that thought takes hold, a searing pain explodes in his chest, radiating out toward his ribs like fire racing along a fuse. His breath catches. His eyes sting, threatening to water, but opening them fully feels like too much effort. A blurry haze greets him when he does. Everything shifts and warps, the strain making his skull pound in rhythm with his pulse. Screw it. He lets his eyes fall shut again, retreating into the darkness. Way better. Breathing is a goddamn nightmare. He wishes he could just stop doing so, but guess that would undo all the efforts that brought him here in the first place. So, he keeps breathing. Somehow, something rigid presses against his upper lip, cold air puffing into his nose in an unrelenting rhythm. It's annoying. A bandage or brace, something tight, wraps around his ribs, locking his chest in place and choking off any chance at a deep breath. Atsumu tries to shift, instinctively wanting to get rid of whatever's constricting him, but his body protests immediately. Pain lances through him in sharp, vivid streaks, leaving him trembling and gritting his teeth. Everything fucking hurts. His ribs ache with a deep, throbbing pulse. His neck burns like he's slept wrong for a decade. His head pounds, sharp and relentless, while other places flash with stabs of pain. His right arm feels heavy, weighed down by the tug of an IV. Even the faintest twitch in his fingers pulls on the needle, a small but constant reminder of his current state of helplessness. Atsumu grits his teeth. Fuck this. Seriously, genuinely, fuck all of this. The thought of tearing the IV out flits through his mind, one of the many nagging impulses bubbling beneath the pain. But the moment he tries to lift his left arm, fresh agony tears across his chest and down his side, forcing a groan past his lips. Shit. His body refuses to cooperate, and for now, it wins. Atsumu slumps back against the bed, panting shallowly through his nose, the cold puff of air from the tube doing little to soothe the fire raging in his chest. Honestly, this is worse than death. The sound of soft footsteps draws Atsumu's attention, and soon enough, a familiar figure strolls into the room. Akashi adjusts his glasses with a smooth push of his finger, a clipboard gripped tightly in his other hand. Ah, you're awake, he says, his voice calm and even, like it's the most obvious observation in the world. No shit, Atsumu rasps, his voice scratchy and paper thin, like sandpaper dragged across wood. Akashi doesn't so much as blink at the retort. Instead, he glances down at the charts in his hand, flipping through the pages with the precision of someone completely unfazed. How are you feeling? Atsumu glares at him, or tries to. Anyway, the effort sends a dull ache spiraling behind his eyes, and he gives up halfway through, slumping back against the pillows. What's with these pointless questions? Not so pointless if you ask me, Akashi counters, lowering the clipboard just enough to fix Atsumu with a pointed look. Now, tell me. He pauses, shifting slightly as he leans closer. Any numbness or tingling? Nah, Atsumu mutters, dragging the word out as a smirk tugs at the corner of his mouth. Unless yeah, count in the tingles I get from your lovely bedside manner, Doc. Akashi scowls. Charming as ever, I see. Atsumu exhales sharply, the sound half sigh, half groan. No, he admits more seriously. Everything hurts like a bitch. Satisfied? That earns him a subtle but unmistakable sigh. Akashi straightens, his calm demeanor cracking just enough to show a sliver of irritation. You were damn lucky, he says, setting the clipboard down on the small bedside table. Lucky, huh? Atsumu shoots back, his tone drenched in sarcasm. I must have missed the part where I won the grand prize. Keiji-kun. What was it? A free tour of hell? Akashi pinches the bridge of his nose, his patience clearly wearing thin. Yes, lucky. Atsumu, he repeats, deadpan. Considering how many bullets you dodged and the fact that you're still alive to make those delightful comments, I'd say you're downright blessed. Atsumu huffs, then licks his teeth, the faintest ghost of a grin tugging at his lips despite the pain. Guess I didn't dodge enough bullets, though, huh? Akashi doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he fixes Atsumu with a steady, assessing gaze, his sharp eyes sweeping over him with clinical precision. The silence feels heavier than Atsumu expects, stretching until Akashi speaks. Your liver was hit, he begins, his tone as even as always, though there's a flicker of something beneath it, something sharp and tense. The damage caused severe internal bleeding. By the time you got here, you were a hair's breadth away from hypovolemic shock. The golden hour had already passed. Atsumu's throat tightens, and he swallows hard, gaze fixed on the ceiling. His eyes sting from the harsh light above, but it's nothing compared to the memory of red. So much red, staining his clothes, pooling beneath him. He's been hurt plenty of times before, but this felt different. Atsumu closes his eyes. You'd already lost a significant amount of blood by the time you arrived. We managed to repair the damage to your liver without removing too much of the organ, but, he pauses, letting the weight of his words settle. Then, he sighs. It'll take time to heal, Atsumu. A lot of time. You're lucky we caught it when we did. Lucky. Atsumu knows what Akashi is really saying. A few minutes later and he'd be dead. He gulps again, trying to suppress the shudder crawling up his spine. His ribs protest even the slight movement, but the tightness in his chest isn't just from the pain. Thinking too much about what happened makes his gut wrench. When the hell do I get out of here? Atsumu mutters. Akashi's scowl deepens. Do you feel like going for a jog? The very thought of moving makes Atsumu's expression twist into something between irritation and disbelief, but before he can snap back, Akashi snorts. Yeah, that's what I thought. He steps over to pin some of Atsumu's files neatly to the board above his bed before turning back. You'll need to stay here for a while, Akashi informs him matter-of-factly. At least until I'm confident you're on the mend. Atsumu clicks his tongue, then winces when even that small motion pulls at his side. TCH. Then you might as well get me something strong to help pass the time. Alcohol is prohibited, Akashi replies without missing a beat. Atsumu sucks in a sharp breath to respond, only to have it cut short as his chest tightens painfully. He grimaces, wheezing out, don't tell me I gotta live in abstinence now. His voice carries just enough dramatic flair to make Akashi raise one eyebrow. Would that be so bad? KGI. Atsumu drawls, a faint, pained smirk tugging at his lips. How am I supposed to sit through Iko's monologues without a drink in my hand? Akashi's lips curl slightly upward, a rare show of amusement. You'll be able to drink again when I'm certain your liver has healed enough, he explains. But you might find alcohol hits you harder than it used to, so be careful. A few drinks may feel like a lot more. Atsumu hums heavy-lidded, his grin turning lopsided. Can't wait to find that out. Akashi's judgmental gaze sharpens, but it only lasts a moment. He shakes his head with a soft snort, unable to fully suppress a small grin of his own. It's good to see you're doing well, Atsumu. Atsumu lets out a breath, his body sinking further into the pillows. His smirk fades into something quieter, almost genuine. Thanks for saving my ass, Doc. Again. Akashi nods curtly and there's the faintest flicker of warmth in his expression. Get some rest, he says, turning toward the door. You also have a concussion that you need to get rid of. Before he can take a step, though, the door bursts open with a loud bang. Is it true? Did he really? Osamu's voice cuts off abruptly as he freezes mid-stride. His wide eyes lock onto his brother, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. Atsumu blinks, his lips twitching upward. Oh, he croaks voice, barely audible but enough to break the silence. Long time no see. Fucking dickhead, Osamu mutters, then curses something under his breath, his expression wavering between anger and relief before he finally snaps. You absolute dumbus. You're trying to give me a heart attack or something. He strides toward Atsumu, but Akashi intercepts him with a hand to his chest. Careful, he warns. His condition is still fragile. Osamu holds, blinking like he just remembered where he is. Right, he mutters, stepping back a little awkwardly. He pulls a chair up beside the bed, sitting down heavily. His hand finds Atsumu's, and he grips it as tightly as he can without hurting his twin too much, his thumb brushing over Atsumu's knuckles. I'll leave you two alone, then, Akashi says as he slips out of the room. And now it's just them. For a moment, neither of them says anything. Osamu's gaze sweeps over Atsumu, lingering on the bruises that bloom dark across his skin, the bandages wrapping his torso, and the faint tremble in his breaths. His jaw tightens, a flash of guilt and concern flickering in his eyes. It's as if he's taking inventory, trying to piece together just how close his brother had come to slipping through his fingers. Atsumu watches him right back, his own eyes roaming over Osamu's face, tracing the worry etched into his brow. His gaze drops to Osamu's arms, his hands, searching for any new scars or signs of injury, but he finds nothing but smooth skin, unmarred and steady. Relief washes over him then, easing some of the tension in his chest. It means Osamu had made it out of Inarizaki unscathed, no close calls, no blood spilled. That's good. That's all Atsumu could ever ask for. How you feelin'? Osamu finally breaks the silence, his voice quieter now. Like shit, Atsumu replies bluntly. Osamu huffs, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. Yeah, he says leaning in slightly. You look the part. Fuck you, Atsumu shoots back, though the insult lacks its usual bite. Osamu chuckles softly before he stands up and leans over with deliberate care to wrap his arms around Atsumu's neck. His movements are slow, careful not to jostle the IV lines or put pressure on the bandages. His cheek rests against Atsumu's temple, the warmth of his body grounding and soothing in a way Atsumu hadn't realized he so desperately needed. The world feels a little less fragile, a little more solid, as Osamu's steady presence wraps around him. And for another moment, Osamu doesn't say anything. He just holds Atsumu there, his arms firm but gentle, as if to reassure himself that his brother is real, alive. There's a weight in his silence, heavy with words he doesn't know how to say. His grip tightens slightly, his breath hitching as though he's bracing himself against the thought of a world without Atsumu in it. Then, quietly, Osamu murmurs, "Don't ever do this to me again, Atsumu." His breath catches, and he presses his cheek a little closer, his lips ghosting over Atsumu's temple like a fleeting promise. I almost lost it when the news hit me. His voice wavers, the vulnerability slipping through cracks in his usual steady composure. The words aren't polished or rehearsed, they're rough, unguarded, stripped bare. It's not just worry, but fear, a kind of desperation that makes Atsumu's chest ache more than his injuries. He wants to reach out, to wrap his arms around his brother and hug him back, but his body won't comply. Every muscle feels weighed down, every nerve alive with pain. So, Atsumu settles for murmuring weakly, "No need to flip out, Samu." But they both know it's just empty words. Because Atsumu would have lost it too. If it was him, fighting in Inarizaki, getting a call that his brother passed out again somewhere hundreds of kilometers away, Atsumu would have lost it too, yeah. He would have let the world burn. Osamu pulls back slowly, huffing a wet laugh as he sits down again. His eyes shimmer, betraying the emotion he's trying to contain, and it hurts to see him like this. Atsumu is covered in wounds and bruises, but none of them are as painful as the sight before him. Yeah, Atsumu thinks he's a bit of a shit brother. He's sorry. So incredibly sorry. Asshole, Osamu says shaking his head. But his tone softens, and he sighs before continuing. You think it's cool? Getting a call from someone you figured was the most composed guy alive, only to hear him sound like a wreck, shaken to the goddamn ground, telling you're the only family you have left just passed out from bleeding too much? No, it's not. Osamu leans forward, elbows on his knees, and stares deeply into Atsumu's golden eyes, his voice quieter but no less raw. Atsumu's throat tightens, his mouth going dry as he watches Osamu's expression shift between anger, relief, and something deeper, fear. All I got was him telling me over and over how slim your chances were, Osamu continues. He huffs out a mirthless laugh. Kept saying there wasn't much anyone could do, that the team'd have to be goddamn S-tier to even give you a shot. Atsumu gulps hard, his heart twisting painfully in his chest. Kyumi. It's barely a whisper. Osamu's brows knit together as Atsumu frowns, his gaze dropping to contemplate his brother's words. The last memory of Kyumi burns in his mind, a flash of trembling hands and wide, dark eyes, usually so steady but now frantic, like a storm-tossed sea. Fear had poured from them, raw and unguarded, a silent plea that struck deeper than words ever could. It wasn't like him to lose composure, to let his emotions spill out, and yet that moment, Atsumu swallows hard. He remembers Kyumi's voice, shaken, desperate. It plays in his mind like a haunting refrain, the sharp edge cracking in a way Atsumu had never heard before. And then, there was his touch, firm yet unsteady, grounding Atsumu in the chaos as his world bled out around him. His gaze snaps back up to Osamu, urgency sparking in his eyes like a flame reigniting. Where is he? His voice cracks, hoarse and raw, yet insistent. Osamu leans back in his chair, crossing his arms. Banned him from the hospital. Atsumu's eyes widen in disbelief. Samu. He jerks upright in indignation, but the motion is a mistake. Oh, and what a mistake it is. Pain tears through his body like a wave, and he collapses back against the pillows with a guttural groan. Seriously, this is utter shit. Relax, Osamu orders, leaning forward to push him back gently. You'll rip your stitches, idiot. Atsumu pants, glaring weakly. You banned him. Osamu huffs. He was here every second. Atsumu wouldn't leave your side no matter what, so I told him to go home and catch some sleep before he passed out. 2. Atsumu's lips part slightly as Osamu's words sink in. Osamu watches him carefully before adding with a smirk. Who would have thought you'd wake up the moment your lover's gone? Atsumu freezes, his face flushing slightly despite the exhaustion weighing him down. Omi was here, all this time? Osamu nods, his smirk fading into something softer. Refused to leave you alone, even when I told him you'd be fine. Stubborn bastard didn't believe me. Wait, Atsumu blinks, startled. So, you two didn't fight? Osamu chuckles, a low, amused sound. Why would we? Well, Osamu is right. Why would they? Of course, they didn't fight. The thought had gnawed at him irrationally, some stupid part of him fearing his brother might blame Kayumi for what happened, though, logically, that made no sense. Osamu was better than that. Better than Atsumu could ever be. Relief washes over him anyway. He closes his eyes briefly. Then, Atsumu's voice softens. Tentative. Is he? He's fine, Osamu says simply, then huffs, the sound caught somewhere between frustration and sympathy. Well, given the circumstances, I guess. Atsumu closes his eyes again, but this time, it's not relief that floods him, it's the memory. The haunting image of blood trickling down his temple, of tears staining that beautiful face, of a panicked expression, helpless, desperate to do something but unable to. His stomach twists, and he forces himself to push it away. What the hell even happened? He mutters. Osamu shifts slightly, his chair creaking as he leans forward. What's the last thing you remember? Atsumu tries to piece it together, his head throbbing in protest. The fragments of memory refuse to slot into place, slipping through his grasp like water. The headache sharpens and he wrinkles his nose in pain. I know I got shot, he grunts finally, frustration evident. He never gets shot. So, this memory stings a little. Omi-kun, he tried to stop the bleeding. I know Tendo and Ashijima are taken down, but, that's about it. His voice grows sharper, laced with irritation. And these drugs are fucking shit. They are supposed to numb me, but I feel everything tenfold. What the hell? This is utter crap. Osamu chuckles again, leaning back slightly. Well, you've been high enough for the past couple days. About time you woke up and got sober again. Couple of. Atsumu blinks at him, wide-eyed and shocked. How long has it been? 2 weeks. I've been out cold for 2 weeks. Not quite, Osamu replies, lips twitching into a faint smirk. They had you under heavy sedation and pumped full of painkillers. Let's just say you weren't exactly lucid. Atsumu's brow furrows. I don't remember any of it. Probably not supposed to, Osamu says with a shrug. They kept you drugged so you wouldn't be in as much pain, and so you wouldn't tear out your IV again. Again? Atsumu echoes, raising a brow. Osamu's smirk widens as Atsumu glances down at his hand, noticing the faint bruises dotting the veins. He flips his other hand over and finds the same, the sight sending a shudder through him. The thought of needles piercing his skin multiple times? Let's just say you're not the most compliant patient in the world, Osamu teases, patting Atsumu's arm lightly, carefully. But hey, you made it. That's what matters. Atsumu lets out a shaky breath, his mind still racing. And you were here? The whole time? Osamu nods, his gaze softening. Yeah, but it wasn't just me. Rin, Kayumi, Oikawa, Hinata, Bakuto, honestly everyone. They've all been coming in whenever they had the chance. Gosh. Atsumu's chest tightens at the thought of so many people caring for him. He tries to picture it. Hinata's bright smile, Bakuto's booming voice, Oikawa's dramatic concern. But it's hard to piece together when his mind is just a thought. Osamu chuckles lightly. Kayumi even managed to threaten the nurses and docs that he wouldn't leave, even if visiting hours were over. Poor Akashi had to step in and talk to his colleagues to make it possible for me and him to stay. The image of Kayumi standing stiff-backed, arms crossed like a lieutenant ready to issue orders, glaring down a poor nurse with his sharp, predatory intensity pulls a quiet chuckle from Atsumu. It's absurd, yet so vividly Kayumi. Atsumu can almost hear him, low, clipped, and unnervingly calm as he delivers a threat wrapped in silky professionalism. Something like, if you think I'm leaving, you're gravely mistaken. I have all night, but you look like you don't, paired with the kind of stare that could make a seasoned hitman second-guess their life choices. The thought grows even more ridiculous as Atsumu pictures the poor nurse wilting under the pressure, while Kayumi's whole frame radiates a quiet menace, an immovable wall of sheer stubbornness in a tailored coat. Maybe Bakuto was there too, less menacing and more chaotic, offering unhelpful commentary like, yeah, what he said. Or you don't mess with our guy. Atsumu snorts softly at the mental image. Yeah, that's his Omi alright, stubborn as hell when it comes to the people he cares about, and evidently ready to square up with hospital staff, apparently willing to wage psychological warfare on them just to stay by his side. Osamu chuckles too, shaking his head. He gave Akashi a headache, but it worked. Still, I had to send him home eventually, for his own sake. Atsumu's lips twitch into a weak smile. Thanks, Samu, for taking care of him. Of course. Osamu's expression softens even further, and he reaches out to pat Atsumu's arm again, this time with a lingering warmth. He was really worried about you, Atsumu. Yeah. Atsumu sighs. I know. The door creaks open and Rin strides in, a cup holder in one hand and a smirk already tugging at his lips. Now look who's finally awake. Thought you might have decided to sleep forever just to avoid another ass whooping from me. Atsumu snorts, his lips curling into a grin. As if I'd need to avoid you. Even in this sorry state, I'd still wipe the floor with you. Suna raises an unimpressed brow. Yeah, sure, champ. You'll have to beat this hospital bed first. It's got you pinned real good. He places the drinks on a nearby table and moves straight to Atsumu's bedside. Without hesitation, Rin leans in and wraps Atsumu in a firm hug, careful not to jostle him too much. The embrace is warm and grounding, like a tether in the sea of fog Atsumu's been drifting through. Suna doesn't let go immediately, and Atsumu doesn't mind. It's soothing, having them both here, his brother and Rin, his family. When Suna finally pulls back, his smile is small but genuine. Atsumu meets his gaze and holds it until Suna breaks away, shifting to Osamu. He presses a kiss to Osamu's temple before stepping behind him, wrapping his arms around his shoulders in an effortless display of affection. Atsumu raises a skeptical brow, his gaze sharpening. You know, just 'cause I'm tied to this stupid bed in this stupid hospital doesn't mean I won't kick your ass for being all lovey-dovey in front of me. Rin's face flushes a deep red, and he buries it into the crook of Osamu's neck, grumbling something unintelligible. Osamu just grins sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck as if caught in the act. Osamu clears his throat. We've sorted it out, I guess. Atsumu blinks, processing the words for a moment before realization dawns on him. His eyes widen, and he gasps dramatically, lurching upright again only to immediately regret it with a sharp wince as pain shoots through him like a sniper's bullet finding its mark, sharp and unforgiving. For fuck's sake. He groans, flopping back onto the bed. These damn painkillers are useless. Osamu snorts, leaning forward to adjust Atsumu's blanket. Serves you right for being so dramatic. But Atsumu is still staring at them, disbelief and a hint of delight flickering in his gaze. So, you two are finally, what, together now? Osamu nods. Yeah. Fucking finally. Suna clears his throat, still half hiding in Osamu's neck. Yeah, well, I'll come with you to Osaka. Figured it'd be easier. Atsumu's grin turns downright mischievous. Oh, great. So now I gotta live with ya? This just keeps getting better. Suna rolls his eyes. Don't worry, Tsumu. I'll make myself scarce. I know the sight of me is overwhelming for your fragile ego. Overwhelming? The only thing overwhelm me is the thought of you turning my peaceful recovery into some kinda circus. Oh, your peaceful recovery? Didn't realize groaning like a wounded animal every 5 minutes was part of the tranquility package. Atsumu narrows his eyes, lips twitching into a smirk. At least I ain't the one strutting in here like a wannabe mafia housewife with drinks for the family. You sure you don't got an apron stashed somewhere, Rin? Suna arches a brow, his smirk sharpening. Aha, so no drink for you then. Got it. Wait, what? The smirk falls from Atsumu's lips immediately. What did you bring? Rin's eyes gleam with mischief as he reaches for the cup holder, his fingers curling around one of the cups like it's a prize he's been waiting to present. His smirk widens into a devilishly bright grin, all teeth, practically daring Atsumu to grovel for it. With deliberate slowness, Rin plucks one of the drinks and hands it over to Atsumu anyway, his expression smug. Then, he says, still smiling, whiskey. And Atsumu gasps. Suna in terror. This must be what heaven feels like. I think I'll have to marry you. Osamu and Rin stayed for another hour or two, recounting everything that had unfolded while Atsumu was unconscious. The story wasn't pretty, an awful fight against Daisho and his men, one that left all of them bruised and battered, but ultimately victorious. It was strange seeing Terashima again, like every fiber of Osamu's being resisted the idea of punishing the one person responsible for everything he had endured over the past few years. Terashima had wormed his way so deeply into Osamu's mind, twisted and manipulated him until it felt like he couldn't breathe without second-guessing himself. Facing him wasn't just hard, it felt impossible. But Suna was there, steady and unshakable, and somehow, his presence made it bearable. If it hadn't been for him, Osamu admitted, he wouldn't have been able to face Terashima at all. Atsumu watched him as he spoke, but his gaze kept flickering to Rin. He sat still and quiet, his sharp eyes meeting Atsumu's with a calm intensity. Suna had pushed Osamu to keep going when things looked bleak, stepping in at critical moments to cover for him. Osamu's voice softened as he admitted that Suna had saved his life more than just once in Inarizaki, and Atsumu's chest tightened at the thought. He knew, deep down, that Suna had done more for his brother than he himself ever could. He had helped Osamu grow, helped him finish what he'd started, and stepped in whenever it was necessary. Atsumu owes Suna more than he would ever admit aloud, and Suna knows it too. So, it's not just gratitude worming its way into Atsumu's thoughts, but also guilt. He thought of all the times he'd accused Suna of not loving his brother enough, of not caring the way he should. It felt stupid now, in hindsight, like he'd been blind to what was right in front of him. Atsumu wanted to apologize but knew it would be pointless. Suna had made his own mistakes in his relationship with Osamu, and he wasn't the type to accept an apology for something they both knew wasn't entirely one-sided. So Atsumu did what he did best. He deflected. Well, that explains why you're such a sloppy assassin, he quipped, pointing at a particularly nasty cut that Suna had taken instead of Osamu. A grin tugged at the corners of Atsumu's lips, but Suna didn't miss a beat. And yet I'm not the one tied to a hospital bed, am I? Atsumu's grin evaporated, his mouth snapping shut. Osamu barked out a laugh, loud and genuine, and the sound filled the room with a warmth that almost made Atsumu forget the ache in his chest. Osamu wasn't finished, though. He leaned forward, his expression turning thoughtful as he continued. You should have seen Kita fight Daisho. His voice held a quiet awe, the kind that made Atsumu bristle. He scowled, his lips twisting into a pout. Not that he was jealous or anything. No, definitely not. Mere Atsumu didn't get jealous. He wasn't sitting there fuming about missing out on the thrill of seeing Kita, cool as ever, squaring up against Daisho. And he certainly wasn't imagining the fight in vivid detail, complete with Kita delivering some devastatingly stoic one-liner before taking Daisho down. So, no, not jealous at all. It's a lie. He was immensely, catastrophically jealous. The thought of missing out on that was almost unbearable because hello, they are talking about Kita-san. In a real fight. But apart from that, not that he'd admit it out loud, Atsumu wasn't sure he'd ever breathe this easily again after everything Osamu had told him. Inarizuki had won. There were injuries, yes, battle scars that would linger, but no devastating losses. Daisho and Terashima were dead, their reign of manipulation and chaos ended for good. Kuru had stepped up, overseeing the redistribution of the circuits back to how they had operated before Nahibi's takeover. Of course, not everyone wanted to resume their old roles. Many had seen enough blood and betrayal to last a lifetime, and several clans signed a declaration to keep their circuits free, opting out of the Yakuza hierarchy entirely. It was just as they had planned. Cleaner, fairer, free. No more suffocating monopolies. Those who wanted to take back their districts were allowed to do so. Others, choosing peace, let their territories become neutral ground. Atsumu let the relief settle in his chest for a moment before curiosity pushed it aside because so many things were still unclear. What happened to Miyagi? And Tokyo? 𝒕💍💂💄𝒆�? And what happened to the Schweden Adlers? Osamu sighed, though a smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. While Ashijima and the rest of the Adlers believed Kageyama was helping them out, Kageyama had been quietly orchestrating the downfall of his own 𝒂𝒉𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔. The young man never worked against Oikawa, but undermined Ashijima all the while. With Hinata's help, Kageyama had managed to turn the tables on the Schweden Adler's infamous leader. The loyalty Ashijima assumed was his had been nothing more than a facade, one Kageyama masterfully manipulated. By the time he could have realized what was happening, Kageyama had returned to Sendai, not to fulfill his mission of breaking Aoba Josei, but to dismantle Ashijima's empire from the inside. At that, Atsumu barked out a laugh. Turned out, Kageyama Tobio wasn't exactly the goody two-shoes he assumed he was. Far from it. The result was a seismic shift in Japan's balance of power. The Schweden Adlers, now under Kageyama's leadership as their new 𝒂𝒉𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒔, controlled half of Tokyo City. Nakoma, led by Kuru, claimed the other half. Districts outside their influence were either returned to their former leaders or declared independent, free from the weight of old grudges and alliances. And there was more. The remnants of Ashijima's morbid plans had been rooted out and eliminated. Those few who refused to adapt to the new world order were no longer a threat. Kageyama, Oikawa, hell, everyone had convinced most of the Adlers that things couldn't continue the way they had before, that the era of greed and unchecked power was over. New trade routes were established, alliances formed between old rivals. Instead of working against each other, people were finally working together. In Miyagi, Oikawa reclaimed 𝒕💍💂💄𝒆💄, Sendai became independent. Atsumu exhaled deeply, the weight in his chest easing as he whispered, so, everything went according to plan? Osamu nodded, his hand reaching for Atsumu's, their fingers clasping tightly, just like Ma wanted. Atsumu's heart felt impossibly full. For the first time in what felt like forever, the pieces were falling into place, and he was finally able to breathe. So, there was that. The big three were no longer the big three. The war between the Yakuza clans and assassins, and the wars within, had finally ended. Territories restored, alliances reimagined. It was a victory for everyone involved. For the first time in years, the world they lived in felt manageable, survivable. After Osamu shared everything with Atsumu, he and Suna stayed a while longer, the three of them sinking into an easy rhythm that felt like a balm against all the chaos. They chatted about old times, reminisced about childhood pranks and long-forgotten rivalries. They napped together in Atsumu's hospital room in a mess of tangled limbs and awkward angles. Osamu stretched out beside his brother on the narrow bed, their arms and legs wrapped around each other as they shifted for space. Suna, too tall for the setup, had hunched himself over at the foot of the bed, his long legs sprawled out uncomfortably as he dozed with his chin resting on his forearm. It wasn't the most dignified arrangement, but it was warm and familiar, a reminder of years long past when they'd all crowded onto the same futon during sleepovers. Then, they ate together, passing dishes and arguing over who got the last bite. Hinata stopped by, bursting into the room with a whirlwind of energy, and Bakuto wasn't far behind. Motoya rambled excitedly about how incredible it was to fight alongside Inarizuki's assassins, his enthusiasm contagious enough to make Atsumu puff up with pride. And, okay, maybe he was also a little jealous. Again. Because seriously, Motoya had seen Kita fight too. What kind of cosmic joke was this? Oikawa showed up not long after and practically tackled Atsumu into a hug, refusing to let go. The intensity of it made Atsunu's throat tighten, and he found himself laughing to keep from tearing up, and that's crazy, isn't it? To think they grew this close when Atsunu used to hate everything what he stood for. Then again, he thought the same about Koyumi, and yet, hours later, long after everyone had gone, Atsunu found himself lying awake. The room was quiet, save for the faint creak of the wall settling. Outside, snow drifted down in lazy spirals, the flakes soft and powdery as they blanketed the ground. From his vantage point on the bed, he could just make out the snowfall through the sliver of window left uncovered by the curtain, the faint glow of streetlights making the flakes glimmer as they fell. The faint creak of the door broke the stillness, and for a split second, his heart stuttered. He shifted as much as his aching body allowed, his pulse quickening as a figure stepped quietly into the room. Even in the dim light, he looks unreal, his silhouette softened by the gentle glow spilling from the hallway behind him. Snowflakes cling to the edges of his coat, shimmering faintly as they melt, and his hair is tousled, like he'd been caught in a storm. For a moment, it's hard to tell if he is really there or if Atsunu has imagined him, a vision pulled straight from the depths of a dream. Then Koyumi steps into the room, takes off his gloves and places them neatly on a nearby table. He hooks a finger under his mask, unloops it, and reveals the faint smile tugging at his lips. It's shy, almost sheepish, like he's trying to hold it back. A deep blush sits high on his cheeks, whether from the cold outside or from seeing Atsunu again. Maybe both. Well, Koyumi purrs, his voice low and warm, sending a rush of heat straight through Atsunu. Look who finally decided to wake up. Atsunu's lips part, and a wide grin spreads across his face, sharp and teasing. In his head, he's already up, kicking the blanket aside and throwing himself into Koyumi's arms, holding on tight like he'll never let go. But hours spent tethered to reality remind him he can't do that just yet. His body protests even at the thought. Instead, he settles for something simpler, something completely, undeniably him. You know me, Omi-kun, he drawls, his grin widening. Never miss a chance to keep your weight in, huh? Koyumi huffs out a laugh, low and fond, as he steps closer. The mattress dips beneath his weight as he sits on the edge of the bed, and his hand reaches out, sliding into Atsunu's hair. His fingers thread through it slowly, combing in a way that's tender, grounding. Koyumi's gaze locks with Atsunu's, soft yet searching. How are you feeling? He asks. Atsunu's chest swells, warmth blooming behind his ribs. Better now that you're here, he says, the sincerity so thick in his voice it makes Koyumi chuckle. It's honest, real. The sound is quiet, rumbling from deep within Koyumi's chest, but it carries something vulnerable. His eyes soften even more before he leans down, his lips pressing to Atsunu's in a kiss so tender it feels like a secret. Atsunu's breath catches, the moment stretching endlessly, perfectly. When Koyumi pulls away, though, his brows knit together, his lips pursing in a faint frown. Atsunu blinks at him, startled, before frowning himself. What? Did you drink? Koyumi asks, his voice laced with confusion, his gaze flicking over Atsunu's face like he's searching for answers. Atsunu relaxes at the question, his grin turning a little mischievous. He hums, his eyes dipping half closed as he lets his head tilt back against the pillow. A little. Koyumi looks positively baffled now, his lips parting as if to protest. Akashi said you're not supposed to drink until you're fully recovered. Yeah, well, Atsunu says, his grin curling even wider. Akashi ain't here, is he? Koyumi's eyes narrow, suspicion flickering. Where did you even get alcohol? Atsunu grins, entirely too pleased with himself. From my best brother-in-law ever. His tone is dopey, his words dripping with misplaced pride. Koyumi pauses. For a moment, it seems like he's processing the absurdity of Atsunu's statement. Then, with a long-suffering sigh, he tilts his head back, glaring at the ceiling as if asking for patience. Slowly, his gaze drops back to Atsunu, but there's a dark edge to his expression. Oh. Without a word, Koyumi reaches to his side, pulling his gun from its holster. Atsunu's eyes widen comically. Omi, what are you doing? Koyumi doesn't respond. He calmly ejects the magazine, checks it, and reloads the weapon with a precise, practiced motion. The metallic click of the bullet sliding into place sends a jolt through Atsunu. Omi, he tries again, his voice laced with nervous laughter. What are you doing? I'm going to kill him, Koyumi states matter-of-factly, his tone as even as if he were announcing dinner plans. What? Atsunu half screeches, his voice cracking. I'm going to kill Suna. Yeah, I heard that, but you can't just. Koyumi shifts where he's sitting on the edge of the bed, his movement slow and deliberate as he starts to stand. The mattress creaks softly in protest, and Atsunu's heart skips a beat as Koyumi's dark expression turns toward the door. Omi, wait, stop. Atsunu calls after him, panic lacing his voice. He throws the blanket off, intent on hauling himself up to stop Koyumi, but the second his feet hit the floor, a sharp pain lances through his side, and he collapses back with a groan. Fuck. He curses through clenched teeth, clutching his side as the room starts to spin. Koyumi freezes mid-step, glancing over his shoulder with a faint pout tugging at his lips. He sighs, exasperated but soft, before turning back to Atsunu. What do you think you're doing? He scolds, gently but firmly tucking the blanket back around Atsunu. You can't just get up. You need to rest. Atsunu snickers, the sound half laughter, half panicked wheeze. I'll rest, he bargains, if you promise not to kill Tsunorin. Kayumi raises an eyebrow, unimpressed, but there's a flicker of amusement in his eyes. You think that's how this works? Yeah, Atsumu fires back. I'm your patient right now, ain't I? Gotta keep me happy. That's not how patient care works. Oh, sure it is, Atsumu counters, his tone as smug as his lopsided grin. Happy patients heal faster. It's science. Since when do you know anything about science? Since I got shot and lived to tell the tale, Atsumu fires back, throwing in an exaggerated wince for effect. Makes me an expert on surviving and stuff. Kayumi's eyes narrow. Surviving doesn't make you an expert on anything, least of all giving orders. Big words from someone who was about to shoot my brother-in-law, Atsumu retorts, his grin widening despite the flicker of pain coursing through his body. Kayumi leans closer, his expression unreadable, and places a steady hand on Atsumu's bandaged side, applying just enough pressure to make his point. Atsumu hisses, his grin slipping as another sharp jolt of pain flares through him. Do you really think you're in any position to argue? Kayumi's voice drops just slightly, low and velvety but tinged with an edge of authority. Atsumu freezes, his breath catching. He lets out a nervous laugh, hands twitching in a half-hearted attempt to push Kayumi's hand away. All right. Point made, he mutters. No drinking, no running around. Happy? Kayumi raises an eyebrow, his hand still steady against Atsumu's ribs. Still, Atsumu adds quickly, his voice a touch more playful. No murder in family. Deal? Kayumi exhales sharply, the corners of his lips twitching as though he's fighting a smile. Finally, he sits back, his hand leaving Atsumu's side. Fine, he mutters, his tone carrying a thread of reluctant amusement. But only because you're injured. Aha, Atsumu hums, his smirk widening. Love you too, Omi. Kayumi huffs, the faintest hint of a blush creeping up his neck as he avoids Atsumu's gaze. You're impossible, he says, but his hand still finds its way back to Atsumu's hair, brushing through it gently. Atsumu leans into the touch, his grin softening into something fond. You wouldn't have me any other way. Debatable, Kayumi mutters, but the corners of his mouth twitch upward, betraying him. His hand stills, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. Their eyes meet, the silence stretching, charged with something unspoken. Atsumu's grin fades as Kayumi's gaze darkens, his brows drawing together like he's weighing a decision. Slowly, deliberately, Kayumi leans in. His movements are unhurried, giving Atsumu every chance to pull away. Not that he would. The kiss, when it comes, is searing, all-consuming. It's not rushed, but deliberate, as if Kayumi is pouring every unsaid word and every unspoken fear into it. His lips are soft but insistent, molding perfectly to Atsumu's like they were always meant to. It's a kiss that doesn't just ask for connection, it's a kiss that demands it. Kayumi kisses him with a fervency that makes Atsumu's chest ache for entirely different reasons. Not from the injuries or even the remnants of fear. It's something deeper, something raw and overwhelming, as though Kayumi's kiss is cracking him open and exposing everything he's too afraid to say. The world outside narrows to just this moment, the warmth of Kayumi's mouth on his own, the slight tremble in his touch, and the quiet intensity that speaks louder than any words ever could. This, right now, is not just a kiss, it's a claim, a tether, a promise. It tells Atsumu everything he already knows but doesn't know how to believe, that he is wanted, cherished, protected. It carries a weight of desperation, like Kayumi is trying to memorize him, to anchor himself in the proof that Atsumu is still here, still his, still alive, together at last. When Kayumi pulls away, their breaths mingle in the narrow space between them. Atsumu's lips tingle, and his heart thunders in his chest, but Kayumi doesn't retreat far. Instead, he presses a second kiss to Atsumu's forehead, this one softer but no less intense. It lingers there, tender and reverent, as though Kayumi is silently thanking every higher power that Atsumu came back to him. You scared the hell out of me, Kayumi whispers against Atsumu's hairline, his voice trembling just enough to give away the depth of his fear. I thought I'd lost you. Atsumu closes his eyes, swallowing hard against the lump forming in his throat. Kayumi's words settle over him, more piercing than any physical pain he's endured. But Atsumu isn't one to linger in moments like this, he never has been. He forces a grin, cracking one eye open as he tries to deflect. Told you before, Omi, it takes more than a shot to get rid of me. Kayumi pulls back just enough to meet Atsumu's gaze, his expression soft but unyielding. Don't joke about that. Who's jockin'? Atsumu shoots back, though his grin is weaker now, almost apologetic. I'm stubborn as hell, remember? Kayumi huffs a quiet laugh despite himself and caresses Atsumu's cheek with a touch so gentle it sends heat spreading through Atsumu's body. He blushes. A lot. Stubborn doesn't begin to cover it. Atsumu leans into Kayumi's touch, his eyes fluttering shut again as his breathing evens out. For the first time in a while, Atsumu feels truly at ease, safe, like nothing could go wrong as long as Kayumi is here. It's not just the way his calm presence seems to envelop the room, it's deeper than that, rooted in the quiet certainty that Kayumi would never let anything happen to Atsumu if he could help it. Right now, that unwavering strength radiates through every small gesture, the deliberate care in Kayumi's touch, the quiet worry that softens his usually sharp gaze, the simple fact that he's here, unwilling to leave Atsumu's side. Kayumi is the one constant Atsumu knows he can always rely on, the one person who doesn't just stay but stays fully, grounding Atsumu in a way no one else ever could. With Kayumi here, it doesn't matter how close the world came to falling apart. It doesn't matter how much it hurt or how terrifying it was. Kayumi's presence is a quiet assurance, a promise that things will be okay, and that alone will always be enough. Sleep tugs at Atsumu, heavy and warm, but he pries his eyes open as a quiet apology slips from his lips. I'm sorry, he murmurs, his voice low and sincere, for scaring you like that. Kayumi's brows pinch together for the briefest moment before he gently shakes his head. Don't, he says softly. It's okay. Atsumu frowns, the apology lingering on his tongue. He shifts slightly, his ribs protesting the movement, but he doesn't care. How are you doing, though? He asks, his voice tinged with worry. The memory of Kayumi's face flashes through Atsumu's mind, etched with terror, pale and stricken as though the sight of Atsumu bleeding out had dragged him into a nightmare he thought he'd left behind. Atsumu swallows hard. He never wanted Kayumi to go through that again, to relive that kind of fear. His eyes are heavy with exhaustion, but he forces himself to look at Kayumi, to really look at him, his expression softening as he studies the man who hasn't left his side. Despite everything, Kayumi is still here, steadfast and strong, even if everything is clearly wearing on him too. Atsumu aches to reassure him somehow, to do something to ease the pain he knows Kayumi is carrying. The thought twists something sharp in his chest, and despite the ache coursing through him, Atsumu raises his hand, his fingers brushing clumsily against Kayumi's cheek. Kayumi catches his wrist, guiding Atsumu's palm to rest fully against his face. His skin is warm, grounding, and Atsumu exhales shakily as his thumb strokes over Kayumi's cheekbone. I'm okay, Kayumi says after a moment, his voice quiet but steady. Especially after I knew you would wake up. Atsumu's heart swells, the warmth of Kayumi's words sinking deep, filling the cracks left by his guilt. It soothes the gnawing ache that had been clawing at the edges of his mind since he woke. This relentless whisper that he'd put Kayumi through too much, asked for more than he ever had the right to do. But now, hearing Kayumi's quiet reassurance, it feels like a balm on a wound he didn't realize had been festering. The guilt doesn't vanish entirely, but it ebbs, leaving behind something softer, warmer. Gratitude, maybe. Or love. Or both. Sam, you said you refused to leave, Atsumu says, his tone softer now. Said you wouldn't move from my side no matter what. Kayumi breathes out a faint sigh and nods. I couldn't, he admits, his gaze unwavering. Not when you needed me. Atsumu's chest tightens at the raw honesty in Kayumi's voice. His fingers trail from Kayumi's cheek down along his jaw, tracing the sharp curve before moving lower, over the dip of his collarbones. His hand stills when it brushes against the golden sun charm resting against Kayumi's chest, the necklace that once belonged to Osamu. His eyes fix on it, the charm catching the faint light in the room. He grasps it gently, his fingers curling around it as though anchoring himself to something real. Kayumi sits still and watches him. Then, slowly, he reaches out and wraps his fingers around Atsumu's hand, holding it firmly between his own. The charm is caught between their palms, the cool metal a sharp contrast to the warmth radiating from Kayumi's skin. His expression is impossibly tender, so much so that it makes Atsumu's breath hitch. Atsumu's eyes are wide open now, as though he's trying to take all of Kayumi in at once, as though this moment might slip through his fingers if he isn't careful. Kayumi's cheeks are flushed, blush sitting high on his bones, and Atsumu is sure by now it's not from the cold outside. Not anymore. His own cheeks burn, a soft heat spreading over his face, and he swears he can feel it creeping down his neck. His heart pounds in his chest, each thrum echoing louder than the last, until his emotions swell and swell inside him, threatening to overflow. What about now? Atsumu murmurs, his voice quieter than he expects, his lips barely moving. He swallows hard, then ventures, are you gonna leave once I'm outta here? Kayumi looks at him, so deeply that Atsumu feels the weight of it settle in his chest. His dark eyes are serious, searching, but not cold. Will you stop needing me? He asks softly. Atsumu stares at him, the answer so obvious it feels like it's written across his skin. Of course not, he thinks. I will never stop needing you. He doesn't say it aloud, but the truth lingers between them like the press of their hands. He knows it. Kayumi knows it too. Before he can overthink it, Atsumu tugs at the necklace and yanks Kayumi forward, ignoring the sharp protest of his ribs, and crashes their lips together. A kiss so deep, so consuming, a culmination of all the feelings neither of them dared to say until now. Kayumi meets him with equal fervor, his free hand sliding up to cradle the side of Atsumu's face. His touch is firm but reverent, as though he's afraid Atsumu might slip away if he doesn't hold him tight enough. Atsumu feels the strength of it, the way Kayumi's fingers sink into his skin, not to hurt, but to anchor. It's grounding and overwhelming all at once, this feeling of love, this raw, unspoken depth between them. Atsumu's chest feels tight, almost painfully so, like his heart can't contain the storm of emotions building inside him. His thoughts scatter, leaving only the ache of Kayumi's closeness and the intoxicating way his skin flushes, pink spreading across his cheeks and down his neck. Kayumi is breathing hard, his lips trembling just enough for Atsumu to notice. It's there in the way Kayumi grips him, his hands strong and certain, yet tinged with a desperation Atsumu can feel in his bones. The love between them is so palpable it feels like a force, something beyond words, beyond reason. Atsumu doesn't know what will happen to him, if he'll shatter under the weight of it, or if he'll somehow find a way to survive this raw, unrelenting need. But Kayumi feels it too. Atsumu can see it in every reaction, every breath, every inch of space Kayumi refuses to let grow between them. Their lips move together, the kiss deepening into something impossibly tender and yet feverishly intense, and Atsumu can't help but think that maybe this is what it means to be completely undone and yet whole at the same time. Kayumi's thumb brushes over his cheekbone, a subtle motion that steadies him even as it leaves him trembling, and then they hold each other like this, love crackling between them, overwhelming and raw and perfect, as if they found something neither of them thought they could ever have. When they pull apart, Kayumi rests his forehead against Atsumu's. His eyes flutter shut for a moment, and when he speaks, his voice is a soft murmur, each word brushing against Atsumu's lips. There's your answer, then, Kayumi says, his tone laced with quiet conviction. I won't go anywhere without you. Atsumu closes his eyes, his chest tight and warm and full all at once. His lips twitch into a small, breathless smile, and his fingers tighten around Kayumi's. This is it. This is all he ever wanted. Then you're stuck with me, Omi-kun. Kayumi huffs a soft laugh, the corners of his mouth lifting as he presses a feather-light kiss to Atsumu's temple. Always, he whispers, promising. This feels good. You know, Atsumu starts, leaning back slightly with a smirk. It's still weird thinking of Rin working with Toya-kun for EJP now. They're like oil and water. Kayumi hums, a small smile tugging at his lips. Maybe Motoya is just what Suna needs to stay in line. Atsumu snorts. Good luck with that. If Komori thinks he has Suna entrained, he's in for a rude awakening. Guy's about as manageable as a feral cat. Kayumi glances at him, amused. You say that like you're any less chaotic. Hey, Atsumu protests, though he can't help laughing. At least I don't send cryptic texts at 2 in the morning cause I'm bored. Kayumi smirks. True. Your texts are just riddled with typos. Are not, Atsumu protests, nudging Kayumi lightly. His grin widens. Whatever. Point is, I'm just glad Rin's Motoya's problem now. Means I get more time to deal with you. Kayumi's expression softens, and Atsumu can't help but marvel at how one look from him can make the whole world seem to quiet down. Atsumu squints while tucking a loose curl behind Kayumi's ear. Why are you looking at me like that? Kayumi tilts his head, feigning innocence. Osamu said something interesting when we first met. Yeah? Like what? Atsumu asks, his tone immediately suspicious. Kayumi smirks, letting the moment stretch out just long enough to make Atsumu twitch. They are sprawled out on Atsumu's bed, limbs tangled and skin still warm. The room is quiet except for the sound of their slowed breaths and the faint hum of the air conditioner. Kayumi's head rests against his fist and his fingers trace idle patterns on Atsumu's side. He said you're worth it. Atsumu freezes, blinking. Then he snorts, his grin sharp and teasing. What, were you two having a bonding moment over how amazing I am? Should have known even Sam you can't resist my charm. Kayumi rolls his eyes, but there's the faintest smile tugging at his lips. No, actually, he was probably lamenting how much trouble you've caused since birth. Tokyo is a city that breathes contradiction. It's alive with motion, buzzing with life at every corner, yet somehow, in moments like this, it feels impossibly still. The towering skyline fades into a muted backdrop here, where the temples sit quietly, holding their own against the hum of the modern world. Atsumu has always been struck by it, this balance Tokyo carries, the way it honors the past without losing sight of the present. He wonders if that's why Kayumi seems to fit so well here, a man who's spent his life learning to balance those same opposing forces within himself. Atsumu stands a few steps back, hands tucked in his jacket pockets and lets his gaze drift to the altar before him. The incense burns steadily, its soft tendrils of smoke curling into the air, carrying prayers he hopes reach the heavens. He thinks of her, Kayumi's mother. He hadn't known her long, but her warmth and quiet strength had left a mark on him, something that's lingered long after her passing. In her final days, she'd been nothing but kind to him, her eyes crinkling in a smile even when her body was frail. Atsumu wonders if she knew, even then, how much her son meant to him, how much he always would. His chest tightens as he glances at Kayumi. He stands a little straighter now, his shoulders no longer burdened by invisible weights. There's something different about him, something that's only emerged in recent weeks. It's a lightness, a freedom that seems woven into the way he moves and breathes. Kayumi's mother would have been proud to see him like this, to see her son finally able to exist without the walls he once hid behind. The thought stings. It's beautiful, and it's heartbreaking. Atsumu lets out a quiet breath and shifts his attention to where Kayumi stands, now before Ashijima's family altar. He places a small bundle of red chrysanthemums atop the stone, their deep color striking against the polished surface. His hand lingers there, fingers brushing the cool stone as if trying to hold on to something intangible. Atsumu doesn't say anything. He just watches, his throat tightening as Kayumi stays still, his head bowed slightly, the silence between them filled with something deeply felt. It's a long moment before Kayumi finally moves, his hand falling away as he straightens and turns. Their eyes meet. Kayumi walks toward him. There's no heaviness in his movements, no tension in his frame. He looks at peace. You okay? Atsumu asks softly, his voice barely breaking the quiet. Kyumi stops in front of him, close enough that Atsumu can see the faint sheen in his eyes, though his expression is calm. He doesn't answer right away, and for a moment, Atsumu wonders if he's overstepped. But then Kyumi speaks and his voice is steady and sure. I am, he says simply, and Atsumu knows from the look he gives him that it's true. There's something in his gaze that drives the words home, a quiet conviction that leaves no room for doubt. Atsumu feels it settle in his chest, a warmth blooming there as he nods. He doesn't need anything more than that. Kyumi is going to be okay. Don't forget to send me a postcard from your honeymoon. Atsumu. Fuck off. Atsumu snaps, though the flush creeping up his neck does all the talking for him. The sun dips low on the horizon, painting the 𝒂𝒄𝒆𝒅 in hues of gold and rose. The waves lap gently at the shore, their rhythm soothing and timeless. Atsumu stands barefoot on the cool sand, the faint breeze tugging at his blonde hair. He watches Kyumi at the water's edge, his figure silhouetted against the fiery sky. He is breathtaking like this, his face bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, his jet black curls tousled by the sea breeze. The loose linen shirt he's wearing flutters around him, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing the smooth lines of his arms, the ink adorning his skin. His feet are buried in the wet sand, the surf teasing at his ankles. Atsumu's chest tightens. He doesn't think he's ever seen anything more beautiful, and trust him, he's seen a lot. Kyumi, though he is from another world. He turns and their eyes meet, and for a moment, Atsumu forgets how to breathe. There's something raw and unguarded in Kyumi's gaze, something that feels like the answer to every question Atsumu has never been brave enough to ask. Kyumi walks toward him, the sun setting behind him, casting an almost ethereal halo around his frame. When he stops in front of Atsumu, his cheeks are flushed, not from the wind or from the hot weather outside. Atsumu can tell it's from something deeper. As Kyumi steps closer, Atsumu shifts his weight slightly, his ribs catching the faintest pull of the tattoo inked into his very own skin. It's still new enough that he notices it in moments like these, where everything slows down and feels impossibly significant. You keep looking at me like that, Omi, and I'm gonna start thinking you're a bit of a sim. Atsumu teases, his grin lopsided and warm. He raises a brow, clearly enjoying himself. Or wait, he pauses for dramatic effect, tapping a finger against his chin like he's deep in thought. Maybe it's 'cause you can't handle how good my tattoo looks. You're jealous or something, huh? His hand drifts casually to his side, brushing over the spot where Motoya's handiwork now lies, and he smirks, as if daring Kyumi to rise to the bait. Kyumi snorts softly, but there's no hiding the way his gaze flickers down, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. I'm still surprised you went through with it, he says, his tone dry but fond. You're the guy who used to faint at the sight of needles. Lies. Atsumu scoffs, puffing his chest out just a little, even though the memory still makes his stomach churn. I ain't scared of anything, least of all some stupid little tattoo. His grin wavers, but only slightly, before he recovers with a playful tilt of his head. Besides, I had to. I couldn't let you walk around with that dragon fox on you without matching it, now could I? Kyumi's eyes soften, his gaze lingering on Atsumu like he's trying to memorize every detail. Atsumu rubs at the back of his neck, a little self-conscious under the weight of that look, even though it makes him feel like the luckiest man alive. He thinks he is. He couldn't be anything else. The tattoo had been a long time coming, an intricate design that wove together a dragon, a fox, and delicate cherry blossoms. They bloomed around the jagged scar on Atsumu's side, the branch of the cherry tree seeming to sprout from it. Komori had worked with Atsumu for weeks to design something sleek and elegant, the dragon and fox depicted in flowing lines that felt alive. The fox was nestled near the dragon, their heads tilted toward one another, with soft petals framing the scene. It was Kyumi's favorite part, though he'd never admit it aloud, how the fox seemed to always be looking at the dragon. Atsumu catches Kyumi staring at him and grins. Don't think you're getting rid of me anytime soon, he adds. MSBY contract says so. Pretty sure it's legally binding and everything. Don't remind me. Kyumi rolls his eyes, his lips quirking upward. Hinata and Bakuto nearly gave Ikoa a meltdown when he came in with those new tech kits. Atsumu snorts, his grin widening. Kawa's lucky they didn't blow something up with all the buttons on that gear. Bakuto still thinks the compression sleeves give him superpowers. Because you told him they did. Yeah, well, keeps things interesting, don't it? Atsumu deflects with a laugh. Even Mian was cracking up, though he's probably regretting letting us on the same team. Kyumi hums and tilts his head slightly. You mean he regrets letting you on the team? Atsumu gasps, hitting Kyumi playfully. That's slander. I'm the heart and soul of the jackals, Omi. Ain't nobody else pullin' this kinda star power. Hum. Kyumi replies dryly, though his lips twitch. Sure, Atsumu. Star power. Atsumu grins wider, undeterred. What? You're jealous? Kyumi arches a brow. We all know that Mian is the one who runs the show in Osaka. Hey, maybe. Atsumu shrugs. But as long as we're together, I don't care who's calling the shots. Kyumi's cheeks flush again, the soft pink spreading down to his neck, and Atsumu catches the way his hand tightens slightly around the fabric of his shirt, like he's trying to ground himself. It's a small, unintentional gesture, but it speaks volumes, like he's holding on to something real, something solid, in the overwhelming tide of whatever he's feeling. Atsumu feels it too, the way his own heart thrums wildly in his chest, its rhythm a frantic echo of the emotions surging between them. He stares at the man before him, mesmerized by the raw honesty in Kayumi's every movement. For a moment, it feels like the whole world has narrowed to this, just the two of them, standing on the edge of something impossibly vast. You're staring again, Kayumi says quietly, but there's no edge to it, only a soft warmth that melts into the ocean breeze. Can you blame me? You're beautiful, Atsumu murmurs, a little sheepish. Always have been. Kayumi doesn't reply. Not with words, at least. Instead, he closes the remaining distance between them, his hand finding Atsumu's. He laces their fingers together and lifts them slightly, their joined hands illuminated by the soft light of the setting sun. Kayumi's gaze drops to Atsumu's wrist, and then, with a tenderness that takes Atsumu's breath away, he leans in and presses a soft kiss to the delicate skin right there. His dark eyes hold Atsumu's as if trying to convey everything words couldn't possibly express. Atsumu's breath catches, his lips parting slightly, and he swears he can feel the ghost of that kiss reverberate through his entire body. His cheeks flush hot, and his fingers tighten around Kayumi's instinctively, holding on as though letting go isn't an option. You. Atsumu's voice falters, a rare hesitance softening his tone. You're something else, you know that? Kayumi's lips curve into a faint smile, his thumb brushing over the back of Atsumu's hand. I could say the same about you, he murmurs, his voice low and steady. Then, after a beat, his gaze sharpens just slightly, a flicker of mischief breaking through the softness. But I'd hate to give you too much credit. We both know I'm the one carrying the charm here. Atsumu blinks, caught off guard for a second, before letting out a bark of laughter. Oh, is that so? Undeniably, Kayumi replies, his tone calm, smug, and completely unshaken. His eyes meet Atsumu's, unwavering, as if daring him to argue. Atsumu's grin softens into something more affectionate, his voice dropping to match the intimacy of the moment. You're impossible, you know that? Impossible to resist. Kayumi counters smoothly, leaning in just a fraction closer, their breaths mingling in the space between them. Atsumu feels his heart skip a beat, caught between rolling his eyes and leaning into the warmth that Kayumi exudes. Cocky bastard, he mutters, but the words lack any real bite. Neither of them turns toward the horizon, their gazes remain locked, as if the world around them has faded into irrelevance. The waves hum a gentle lullaby in the background, the sun dipping lower to paint the sky in deep purples and oranges. The first stars begin to wink into life in the twilight, their light soft and fleeting. Atsumu steals a glance at the way the sunset hues play across Kayumi's skin, marveling at the quiet beauty of the man before him, as if he's a part of the scenery itself. Timeless, breathtaking, and entirely his. Kayumi is his. Atsumu can't believe this is real. Still glad we came here? He asks softly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard over the waves. Kayumi looks at him, his gaze steady and unwavering. I am, he says, and there's something in his tone that feels like forever. They stand like that for a while, their hands clasped, eyes on each other, the cool waves licking at their toes. Atsumu's chest constricts, a sudden ache blossoming where his heart should be. His free hand comes up to cup Kayumi's cheek, his thumb brushing against the soft skin. Kayumi closes his eyes and leans into Atsumu's touch. The moment feels suspended in time, the world around them reduced to the gentle cadence of the waves and the faint hum of the evening breeze. It's as if the universe itself is holding its breath, bearing witness to a connection so profound it defies words. A fragile, fleeting eternity that exists only for them. Then Kayumi opens his eyes, and they are glistening. Without a word, Atsumu leans forward, capturing Kayumi's lips in a kiss that tastes like salt and love and forever. It's soft and lingering, carrying the weight of everything they've been through, every unspoken promise, everything that's yet to come. When they pull apart, Kayumi rests his forehead against Atsumu's, their breaths mingling. The waves crash softly in the distance, the stars above seeming to shine just a little brighter, as if to honor this moment, this love, this end that feels more like a beginning. I love you, Kayumi says, like it's second nature. Atsumu's heart stumbles in his chest, Kayumi's confession sinking in like the tide embracing the shore. It feels like too much and not enough all at once, this love that courses between them, fierce and unyielding, threading through every fiber of their beings. Kayumi's gaze doesn't waver, steady and piercing, holding Atsumu together even as he feels like he might shatter from the intensity of it. The vulnerability in his onyx eyes is staggering, a mirror of the same overwhelming emotion Atsumu feels pounding in his chest. It's raw and terrifying, yet beautiful in a way that makes him feel like he's finally found something he didn't even know he'd been searching for. Atsumu swallows hard, his free hand still cradling Kayumi's cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of his jaw as if committing it to memory. His voice feels caught somewhere between his chest and his throat, but it doesn't matter. What they feel is too vast for words, too infinite to be confined to sound. What could he possibly say to match the enormity of what's coursing between them anyway? His own chest feels impossibly full, like his heart has swelled beyond its limits and might burst if he lets go of Kayumi for even a second. He doesn't want to let go. Not now, not ever. His fingers curl slightly against Kayumi's cheek, and Kayumi's lips curve into the smallest, softest smile, his eyes shimmering with something that looks an awful lot like joy. It's in that moment that Atsumu knows with every beat of his heart, with every ounce of his soul, that this love, this feeling, this connection is forever. I love you, too, Atsumu says, because he does. And he always will. Like a secret, only meant for them.